If Aston Martin fixes this, the entire Formula One grid could be in trouble. Because right now, after 2 races in the 2026 season, there is a hidden problem inside their car that is literally destroying it from within. Not a small issue. Not a normal setback. A problem so severe it has already forced them to hold back performance, just to survive a race. But here is the part nobody is talking about. They already have a solution ready for Japan. A radical change. A near B-Spec evolution. And if it works, it does not just make them faster. It unlocks the car they were actually supposed to build from the start. A version no one has seen yet. A version their rivals are not prepared for. And the real reason this matters is something most fans completely missed after China. Subscribe now, because what Aston Martin is about to reveal could change this entire season. The season did not start the way Aston Martin expected. Australia was supposed to be the beginning of a new era. New regulations. New power unit. New identity with Honda. Everything pointed to a reset, a fresh start. But from the very first sessions, something felt off. Not obvious at first. Not dramatic. Just inconsistent. The car was not behaving the way it should. And that is always the first warning sign. Because in Formula One, when a car feels unpredictable, there is always something deeper behind it. At first, the team stayed quiet. Normal adjustments. Setup changes. Trying different configurations. Hoping it was just a matter of understanding. But then qualifying came. And the gap was already too big. Not tenths. Seconds. And when that happens this early in a regulation cycle, it raises serious questions. Because this is not supposed to happen to a team with this level of investment. And yet, the race made things even worse. One car struggling to even be competitive. The other not finishing. But here is where things start to get uncomfortable. Because internally, this weekend was not about fighting for points. It was about collecting data. About surviving. About protecting components. That alone tells you everything. They were not racing. They were managing a problem. And then came China. And this is where the illusion completely collapsed. Because instead of progress, things escalated. Both cars retiring again. Different symptoms. Same underlying tension. And suddenly, it was no longer possible to hide it. Because when issues repeat across 2 completely different circuits, it is not setup. It is not coincidence. It is design. And this is where the first real explanation begins to surface. A vibration issue. But not just any vibration. A structural interaction between the power unit and the chassis. Something that should never reach this level. And yet, it did. Because what makes this situation critical is what that vibration is doing. It is not just making the car uncomfortable. It is damaging one of the most sensitive systems in the entire car. The energy storage system. The battery. And once that starts failing, everything else follows. Performance drops. Energy deployment becomes inconsistent. Reliability disappears. And suddenly, the car is no longer a race car. It becomes a risk. But this is only the surface of the problem. Because the real story is why this is happening in the first place. And that is where things begin to connect with something much bigger. Something that goes beyond just 2 bad races. Because this is not just a technical failure. This is the consequence of a very aggressive decision. Aston Martin did not build a safe car for 2026. They built an ambitious one. A car designed to maximize the new regulations from the very beginning. And that changes everything. Because when you push the limits that early, you do not just gain performance. You also expose risks that other teams avoid. And Honda is at the center of that risk. This is their full return. Not as a supplier. As a true works partner. Integrated. Deeply connected with the chassis philosophy. Which means the engine and the car are no longer separate worlds. They are one system. And when that system works, it can be extremely powerful. But when it fails everywhere. At the same time. And that is exactly what we are seeing. Because the vibration issue is not just an engine problem. And it is not just a chassis problem. It is the interaction between both. A resonance effect. A frequency that builds up through the structure of the car. And instead of being absorbed, it is being amplified. Transferred directly into critical components. Especially the battery. And this is where things become even more delicate. Because the battery in this generation is not just a support system. It is a core performance element. Energy deployment defines lap time. Straight line speed. Defensive capability. Overtaking potential. Everything. So when that system becomes unstable, the entire car loses its identity. And now, Aston Martin is trapped in a very dangerous position. They cannot fully use the power unit. They cannot trust the energy system. And they cannot push the car to its real limits. Which means every lap they complete is below potential. But here is the part that makes this situation even more complex. Fixing the vibration is not a single step. It is not a simple upgrade. It is a chain reaction of changes. Because once you alter how the engine behaves within the chassis, you affect mounting points, structural loads, weight distribution, cooling paths, even aerodynamics. Everything is connected. And that is why the solution they are preparing for Japan is so important. Because it is not just a fix. It is a reconfiguration. A different way of understanding the car. And inside the team, this is already being treated as something much bigger than a normal update. More like a reset, within the same season. But there is a problem. Time. They are only days away from Suzuka. Days, not weeks. Which means whatever they bring, has to work immediately. No room for gradual improvement. No time to experiment. And that pressure creates a scenario where every decision becomes critical. Push too hard, and the car breaks again. Stay too conservative, and they remain uncompetitive. And right in the middle of that balance, is where the next evolution of this car will be decided. But there is one more layer that changes the stakes completely. Because while Aston Martin is trying to fix the present, they are also fighting against something much bigger. Something that could define their entire season before it even properly begins. Because while Aston Martin is trying to fix the car, the clock is already working against them. And not in a symbolic way. In a very real, very unforgiving way. Component limits. Because in this new era of Formula One, you do not just build performance. You manage survival across an entire season. And Aston Martin is already close to crossing a line that most teams avoid until much later. They have already changed critical battery components earlier than expected. Which means one thing. They are running out of margin. And this is where the situation becomes dangerous. Because every additional failure, every extra change, brings them closer to penalties. Grid penalties. Race compromises. Strategic limitations that follow them for the rest of the season. So now, every decision in Japan carries consequences beyond just that weekend. They are not only fixing a problem. They are deciding how much risk they are willing to carry for the next several months. And this creates a hidden tension inside the team. Do you go aggressive and risk breaking more components? Or do you stay conservative and accept being slow? Because right now, they cannot afford both. And this is where things connect with something even bigger. Development pace. Because while Aston Martin is stuck solving fundamental issues, other teams are moving forward. Understanding their cars. Refining their concepts. Unlocking performance step by step. And that gap, even if small now, grows very quickly in Formula One. So this is no longer just about fixing a flaw. It is about not falling behind permanently. Because once that gap becomes structural, it is almost impossible to recover within the same season. But here is where the story takes another turn. Because inside Aston Martin, there is still belief. Not blind optimism. Calculated belief. They know the car has potential. They know the concept is not wrong. It is just incomplete. Held back. Restricted by a problem that is masking everything else. And this is why the Japan upgrade is being treated differently. Not as an evolution, but as a reveal. The first real version of the AMR26? The version they expected to show in Australia. And that is why what happens next is so important. Because if this version finally runs freely, if the vibration disappears, if the energy system stabilizes, then suddenly, all the hidden performance starts to surface. And when that happens, the narrative changes instantly. From struggling team to unpredictable threat. But if it does not, if the same issues return, if reliability still limits them, then something much deeper is exposed. Not just a problem. A miscalculation. At the design level. At the foundation of the project. And that is the line they are about to cross. Because Japan will not just show how fast the car is. It will reveal what this car actually is. And whether Aston Martin built a future contender, or a concept that never truly worked. And this is where everything finally converges. Because until now, every problem we have talked about, vibration, battery damage, lack of performance, limited running, all of it points in one direction. But none of it explains the most important question. Why would Aston Martin take this level of risk in the first place? Why build a car so sensitive, so aggressive, so dependent on everything working perfectly? And the answer is not in the car. It is in the long game. Because Aston Martin is not thinking about 2026 as a normal season. They are thinking about it as the beginning of something much bigger. A foundation. A first version of a philosophy designed to dominate under these regulations. And that is why this car feels so extreme. Because it is not optimized for safety. It is optimized for peak potential. Everything tightly packaged. Everything interconnected. Everything pushed to the edge. And when you design like that, there is no middle ground. It either works brilliantly, or it collapses early. And right now, we are watching that moment of truth. But here is the detail that changes how we see everything. Inside the factory, this situation is not being treated as a failure. It is being treated as a necessary phase. A painful one, but expected. Because when you chase a breakthrough, instability is part of the process. And that explains why they are willing to bring such aggressive changes to Japan. Because they are not trying to save the season. They are trying to unlock the concept. And once that clicks, the ceiling of this car could be much higher than it currently looks. But there is still a problem. And it is a problem no amount of theory can solve. Track reality. Because no simulation, no wind tunnel, no internal data, can replicate what Suzuka will demand. High-speed commitment. Precision through rapid direction changes. Absolute trust in the car. And this is where everything will be exposed. Not in numbers. In behavior. In how the car reacts when pushed to the limit. In how the drivers commit through corners where hesitation costs everything. And if there is still even a small trace of instability, Suzuka will find it. Immediately. But if the car finally behaves the way it was designed to, then something very different will happen. The drivers will feel it. Confidence will return. Lap time will follow. And more importantly, the team will finally have a clear direction. A real baseline. Something they have not had since the season began. And that is when development accelerates. Not slowly. Exponentially. Because once you understand your car, every upgrade becomes more effective. Every change becomes intentional. And suddenly, progress is no longer guesswork. It becomes strategy. And that is the moment Aston Martin is chasing. Not just a better result. Clarity. Because with clarity, everything else follows. But without it, even the most ambitious project starts to break apart. And now, with Japan just days away, everything they have built, everything they have risked, everything they have hidden, comes down to a single moment on track. And the truth is, by the end of Suzuka, we will not just know if Aston Martin improved. We will know if their entire vision for 2026 was right or fundamentally flawed.